Signs of the Southland for Sunday, September 8th. Welcome to your weekly dose of Georgia Tech numbers and words. My name is Akshay Easwaran, and joining me on this beautiful fall feeling, or almost fall adjacent, let's say, Sunday in Atlanta, Georgia, are Jack Purdy and Jake Grant. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
I went and played pickleball this morning, and I did actually pack. I went outside with a layer on because it was early enough, and still I'm not good with cold, but it was mildly chilly enough in the moment where I'm like, I want to start with this. I'm not going to finish with it, but I know this will be good to warm up in. And sure enough, it was.
We're very
Yeah, I mean,
close.
I made the terrible mistake of taking the long way back from getting my car detailed after church because I usually like cruising down North Side Drive on a nice Sunday, completely failing to realize that the Steelers Falcons game was kicking off about 60 minutes out from then. And it was one of those times where I know every city will complain about their drivers, but it was one of those times where like I was in the middle lane. It's like I'm staying in the middle lane. I'm just gonna own the middle lane. I'm gonna own this mistake all the way down because the amount of, stop for turning and like swerving people, I was like, I need to just lock in and go and own this L and I own the L. And that's it was a great day for a drive though. I will say that.
It was, yeah.
Great day for a drive.
Great day to lower the windows and blast
Hmm.
some music.
Do you know who didn't
Maybe
open the?
some.
Do you know who didn't open the windows?
Where
Did
were
they
the
not open the
windows?
dome
They
roof?
did not open the roof.
It was
No,
literally like perfect.
I
Why
know.
even have
They
a
didn't
roof?
open
I
the roof.
I think the forecast had said that there was like when they planned this, that said that there was going to be rain.
Ah, that tells you.
Mm.
And they make some of these choices ahead of time. So
I think there's some NFL rules in the way here beyond just like, oh, it's work. It's nice outside. Let's just open it up. Like you gotta let them know and things like that.
yeah,
So
both leagues, I guess both major leagues that play in that facility have some rules about that. But to the point of Georgia Tech sports, shall we begin with the Syracuse football game? Actually, I want to double back to something that happened during the week
yes.
because there was a press conference that I guess
Jeez.
we start with the press conference that Brent Key gave. I think this was on the 5th. So Thursday,
Yeah.
where he said something along the lines of, if we want to win on Saturday at Syracuse, we have to go up there and be physical and run the football really well. And then I think later on Friday, Syracuse head coach Fran Brown caught that snippet and possibly that snippet. I don't know. I want to give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt. And then
No,
turned
no,
that
you don't.
into
You don't need to.
and then
No.
turned that into the most like Nick Saban puts up fake quotes from ESPN in their locker room kind of beef that I think I have ever heard, possibly.
I mean, this is
It
this.
it I put this on our shot sheet as things that annoyed Jake that ultimately don't mean much. And the first bullet point was Fran Brown bulletin board weirdness.
Yep.
Like out of nothing. I watched that key presser like twice trying to find something. I don't know. This shouldn't have consumed any headspace in any of our heads, but like clearly it meant something to him because they were still going on about it post game. Like it was the toughness thing, and then there was the whole like, yeah, Fran and I overlapped for 3 months at Western Carolina thing. It was all weird and
Yeah.
fake and strange and just why? Why?
It
I put
had
it
a
under
lot
don't
of
mean
like
much because I figured we wouldn't wind up talking about it. Of course, it seems inevitable that we're talking about it
I
now
guess,
because,
yeah.
but this is the same fan base that brought us the Oh, I almost said you stand when
ACC
they
elite
stand.
men's
No, the
basketball.
ACC elite men's basketball because like the students heckled the Boeheim and his team too much. Like,
It wasn't even that. I mean,
come
that one was
on.
just chanting airball at a guy that ended up being a lottery pick, which hilarious, by the way,
It
hilarious.
worked.
But
It worked.
it worked. But they
But
very much so had their
I think
knickers in
we
a twist over
found the
that one.
source of the everyone said we were going to go 7-5 UGA bulletin board material from 2 years ago when they repeated as national champs. But anywho, now you
I
guys got me all
mean,
worked up. We still got like
it's
an hour left of
Let's all
recording.
right.
Ay vey.
We don't need to
it's
give it any more
so
air.
yeah. I mean, like
Yeah.
that's the I guess the setting for this game. And then the game actually happened. So you get a nice game before the game of media.
There,
It's
well, hold on.
best described as
That this was not the story of the week. It was that we were ranked. We were the 23rd ranked team in the country going into this game. That was the real deal here. Like, forget Fran Brown. Like, legit, I do not give two craps about what he said all
I
week here.
shouldn't. It's just very annoying.
But yeah, no, the fact we were ranked for the first time in 9 years is of the biggest deals. And I mean, deserved or not deserved, say what you will. Coaches poll didn't have us ranked. AP poll did have us ranked. Uh, Advanced projections or advanced like SP stuff kind of thing didn't have us in the top 25. But either way, a ranking's a ranking. You take it when you get them.
Yeah, I just a
Yeah.
little bit more context on that. The last time before, or the last time that Tech was ranked before this past week, was September. If I remember, I want to get the date right. It was September 20th, 2015. I was in my freshman year at Tech, and now I have been out for 5 years. So it's been a long time.
Yep.
I think we talked last week, and maybe the week before too, about if this team would be ranked heading into this game. And I think a lot of our discussion was like, hey, they'll probably end up being somewhere in that 25, 27 range. I think that's where the coaches poll had Tech there as well. It has, and we also talked about how the end of I think it was the 2016 season or the 2017 season, that team deserved to be ranked two, and it just didn't. They ended up 26th or 27th and just outside of the field. So I don't want to. I guess I don't want to hedge it. Like I obviously again. Well, I guess to get to the point, Syracuse 31, Georgia Tech 28. Clearly, Georgia Tech is no longer ranked.
Nope, didn't
Just to
even get a
bury
vote.
this,
Yep.
it didn't get a vote this week. But I think, and I didn't want to hedge it. I just wanted to say like, yeah, it's an important step in the progression of the program.
Yeah.
But obviously, it doesn't matter anymore.
So yeah, I mean, I think in a way the plan of get really exposed nationally kind of worked in that regard because the people making those rankings are ones that are listening, that follow storylines and write those stories as well. And so we put ourselves in a position to just be on the top of mind for important people in this context. So in a way, the plan worked in the short term there. Obviously, long term is win all the football games, regardless of what your rank is. But uh, I not to fly a big old mission accomplished banner because there's a lot more work to do. But that
What, you're not
was
going to put the mission accomplished banner behind you on a warship and give the two thumbs up at a press conference?
nope, not yet, not yet, not yet. Long way to go there. But all this was intentional, is what I'm trying to point out.
Well, and even then, like it's how the game gets played, and in that sense, I think it's important to discuss,
Yes.
how we got to that final score.
Good idea. Good idea. Shall I run through this whole thing here? Okay.
Go for it.
Yes. First game ranked in 9 years. Cuse had the ball first, and they wasted absolutely no time with Kyle McCord and his very skilled group of receivers and tight ends. They got a touchdown on their first drive. We countered on our first drive as well on a Haynes King touchdown run, his first of two of the day. He nearly got sacked on the run, got out, and then made it to the house. The next drive, Cuse did not get a touchdown. We forced a field goal attempt, which was blocked by Zeke Biggers. We now block field goals again, I guess. And then we made nothing of that, had a 3-and-out. And then Syracuse got the ball back. They marched down the field once again. Trevor Pena gets a second touchdown of the day, and we're about early in the second quarter here, and we're down 14-7. We had a chance to get in field goal range, but we had to punt after Singleton dropped what was a hard pass to catch. He had to make a pretty big jump, but there was still no one around him.
That was
And so
insane. That was very insane of a leap.
It was a very athletic jump, but he never really had the ball just never got into a spot where he could like catch it. So a lot of ways to go about that. Anyways, Syracuse gets the ball back. They torch us again. Kyle McCord is just not missing passes in any way, shape, or form. And we're not really defending passes in any way, shape, or form either. Their tight end Gadsden makes it 21-7. We were in a spot here mid second quarter where we could, if we drained enough clock, we could get a double possession with the end of the first half, top of the second half. And we did actually get that touchdown where there was 4 minutes left in the first half when we got it. So it was 21-14 after King's second touchdown. We then block a Syracuse punt. So now we have a blocked field goal and a blocked punt in the first half. Get the ball back. We do not get enough yards to get a touchdown, but we set up Burr for a field goal, which he misses. So we're down a touchdown going into the second half. And then a Syracuse field goal is the only scoring of the third quarter. Tech just, I got to say it, third quarter nap. It happened. We get a 4th-and-1 in our own territory with 12 minutes left in the game. We get stuffed really hard down 31-14 or down 24-14, which was not good because then Syracuse got great field position, turned it into a touchdown, 31-14, and it felt like garbage time at this point because we're talking 8-10 minutes left in the game. We get one of those garbage time touchdowns with relaxed defense from Chase Lane. At that point, we got about 5 minutes left. This is where it gets a little interesting. We onside kick because we have to get 2 scores, and there kind of isn't a way we're going to get stopped Syracuse twice and score twice. We recover that onside kick. The ball was touched within 10 yards by Syracuse, which let us recover it, and we score. Jamal Haynes gets a 15-yard touchdown run, and so we are only down a field goal with 2:31 left, and we did not onside kick again, which I disagreed with that call in general, knowing how our defense was playing. And Syracuse had more than enough firepower to just milk the rest of the clock. And that was all she wrote. We lost by 3.
Couple things for me just to get started. Doubling back to that 4th-and-1 with 12 minutes left in the fourth quarter. I checked this against the game on paper / CFB FastStar model. This was actually a pretty obvious go. Like the model wanted Tech to go for it to that position. It was like 5 points of win probability in terms of edge.
It felt obvious in the moment too. Like, I mean, also just 1 yard. It like we can get a yard. Like we may not have been scoring like crazy, but we could get a yard still on most plays, and there just happened to be the one where we got negative yards.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, right? I mean, it ends up costing Tech. I think ends up costing Tech 5% win probability when they're at 12, 13% for the game. But I think in that position, you have to go for it. Otherwise, you are really going to be struggling, right? Especially if you're in a situation where you can't, you're having an extreme difficulty stopping the other offense. Like you have to take advantage of some of these opportunities, even if this one is a little bit unorthodox. Again, it's like a 5% edge. That one's pretty obvious. I think in this game too, Cuse was a little bit more. If you look at pure success rate, which is just positive EPA plays or non-zero positive EPA plays, Cuse was marginally more positive on late downs at 63% to 54 or 56%. But I imagine if I had the late downs EPA in front of me, it would look the difference would be a lot more massive just because Cuse was consistently converting 3rd and 10, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8.
Yeah.
Right.
They were 63% to our 56%. They did 12 times they had a positive result on a late down.
Right. Yeah. And so like they were, and McCord was really good, right? I don't want to take away from that. I think that's one of the things that we clocked when we were coming into this game. Kyle McCord was at Ohio State for a reason.
Yeah.
And maybe you can, like, there's an argument maybe to be made. Hey, you respect McCord too much. You give him a little bit too much cushion. You play a little bit, you give the receivers a little bit too much cushion and you can't come back effectively. That's maybe part of it, but also I think the coverage was pretty terrible in the secondary for most of this game. Consistently, Tech got beat in that 7 to 10 yard zone that we've been talking about for the last 3 weeks.
Oh, God, so badly, yeah.
And especially when they were in these situations where, like in every single game, I mean, every single game thus far, which granted has only been 3, but still, where they've gotten teams into these or other offenses into these disadvantageous situations on late downs, they haven't been able to turn those into stops. And that is like in this game, it was a consistent problem because McCord was able to hit those like hit everything,
Yeah.
right? You knew that this game was going to come down to how much you could keep up with McCord. And for the most part, to Haynes King's credit, he did. I think their EPA numbers are just about even. Actually, no, they're not even. I think uh,
No,
at
they're
least
not.
on the passing side, I
Yeah, two
mean,
points off
McCord
on
had
passing.
0.49 per play. Haynes King had 0.36, but like, I mean, it's in the same ballpark
Yeah.
for the most part.
Jake, I'll let you
Um,
harp on this more, but like I just watching it, was just at no point did it feel like there was any resistance in the pass defense just in
No,
the moment.
and that's why 31-28 is a deceptive score. I mean, this
Yeah.
game,
Yeah.
I mean, deserved is the wrong word, and I don't know if it's a Syracuse probably could have had more, Tech probably should have had less, little bit of this, a little bit of B, but I mean, that Kyle McCord basically did whatever he wanted to the Tech defense, including very long third downs, very long plays in general. It was honestly, it was remarkably similar to watching, 2021 Georgia Tech or 2022, early 22 Georgia Tech, where it's like,
Yeah.
you got the guys, like you've seen some flashes, but I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to say 2020 because I do believe that this Syracuse team is worlds better than that team
Hmm.
we played in 2020
Absolutely.
that won
Absolutely.
one
Yes.
game. I mean,
Both of these teams are. Yeah.
Kyle McCord is phenomenal. They've got some great skill position players. I mean,
hey,
they
hey,
won on
hey,
the field and they
that's
won
a
going away. Like,
that's a diss on Syracuse and New York Giants legend Tommy DeVito. All right, you need to
oh,
give him
well,
his flowers.
Swami. To put some yards on this Kyle McCord receiving stuff, three receivers were averaging 11 plus yards a catch between Pena, Gadsden, and Hatcher, and all in that 11 to 13 range. So when they were getting the ball, they were going a long way. Like that middle of the field 10 to 15 yard stuff was just torching us really badly. On the plus side, our run defense was actually like kind of okay. I don't think they were running many creative run plays to say that much, but they were negative EPA on in the run game. Syracuse was, and they had no rhythm there. But they also just didn't need rhythm there. Like that wasn't
Yeah.
important. In the end, it wasn't important that they couldn't run. I mean, if they were running the ball, we would have been toast by a much worse score. But
Well,
um,
I think that's but even that, I think
it's positive though. It's a
Tech took a
positive.
step. Yeah, but Tech took a step back. Not to take away your positive, but
Right.
I think like
Overall, this was a step back.
uh,
Yes, absolutely.
Tech
yes,
took a giant stumble back is what I would like it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
yeah,
think that was
Yeah.
pretty clear. To anyone that watched this game, that was not the same level of execution. And there's probably a decent statement to be made that they're a much better team than Georgia State. Who knows about Florida State at this point? But I mean, that's this is why you play the games, is it not?
yeah. I think the thing here, and the broadcast said something that I found really important is that against Ohio, Cuse gave up something along the lines of 300 total yards and a bunch of them being rushing yards on the ground. Rushing yards on the ground. Woof. But a lot of that was just really bad missed tackles more than bad run fits, if that makes sense. Right? Like they
Mhm.
were in position to make those tackles just for whatever reason, whether that's Ohio's running back being shifty or whatever, they just weren't able to get guys on the ground. And I think if you're saying, hey, like there's an element of luck that goes into tackling, that reverted to the mean in a way versus Tech, right? For
Yeah.
for Syracuse. Um, so that's something to keep in mind there because the run game really, after being really, really steady in the last two games, um, just offensive output from the run game was really poor in this one.
It wasn't great. No.
Um, and I think on the run defense side, just to add a couple of stats to that too, 15 of 32 Syracuse rushes went to the second level. They were for four or more yards. Tech only had nine run stops, so carries that were for 2 yards or fewer in this game, which was 28%, which was down from 47% and 14 total run stops versus FSU. I didn't pull the state one because it's a different caliber of opponent, but it's stuff like this where if you like you can regress in the pass defense category, the run defense category. I think you can't regress this badly in both, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And yes, like the run defense thing, like you said, Jack, it doesn't matter as much because McCord just kept hitting every pass. So maybe you want to tighten up on the pass defense side and give up more on the run. I don't know. But clearly McCord is the big problem here and how
Yeah.
effective he was able to be. Like he broke game on paper's expected QBR model. It shows him with a 101 or a 101.6 expected QBR. Like he was ridiculous. He was ridiculously good.
It
And
really
and
was.
the
Yeah.
game came down to stopping him in the air, and Tech just could not.
They
And
didn't
the
they
one
didn't do that at all. Not in the slightest.
and the one time we kind of actually did like had a pass deflection and forced that block punt, we didn't make enough of it. So uh,
Yep.
a thing that we
Yeah.
have been getting better at, which is capitalizing on mistakes or big time game changing plays. Today was you change a couple of those and somehow we're weirdly not out of this. Um, but all in all, like yeah, it was those kind of plays you gotta convert. You gotta convert. I weirdly had my score prediction right. I just had the other team winning this one. So vibes. I'll give myself a pat on the back for thinking kind of in the right realm here that McCord's gonna get to us, but we can still do something, and we did do something. Um, I think the progress to think about here is like maybe we weren't as prepared as we should have been. Like they really did just outmaneuver us so badly in the passing game. But we still got ourselves in a position to make this a game late when it really felt like it was over early in the fourth quarter, which I think is fine. I like to think. I mean, obviously I said it, so I like to think that old versions of this team never would have even gotten to this point, which is I guess where I point the
That I
progress.
agree with.
Yeah,
That I think
that
Eh,
that's the main thing is like there's no way we're getting to a 3 point game 2 years ago in this same situation. Like that's just not happening in any way, shape, or form. We're probably getting the punts blocked on our side actually in this case. Um, so all that to say, the fact this is a 3 point game is deceptive. Yes, Jake, you were absolutely right in that regard. But we still got it to a 3 point game, which also speaks to this team never outright quit in the game. They were outmaneuvered. They got beat, but they never quit it.
this entire conversation is veering dangerously into Jeff's. We only lost by 3 to Miami, even though every possible thing that could have gone right to bail us out went
I'm
right.
not
And
equivocate. I'm not going to equivocate.
I know you're not. I know
Yeah.
you're not. But I just want to put that out there to other folks who may be listening that we know that
Yes.
this is like I don't know. I'm
It.
past moral victories. This is not a moral victory. This is a decisive loss, you know, but I don't see any need to, you know, to
not to
harp on
bully
the
old.
team one way or the other with that either. Because frankly, you got to take care of business next week against VMI and then
We do.
just as spooky question mark, if not more so, dare I say, awaits in Louisville, a team that has played no one and is going to be perfectly rested coming off a bye when Georgia Tech has played. Will be playing for the fifth straight week in a row. They have not left
Right.
their own building and they'll already have had a bye. So
Right. That's going to be a miss.
that is not a very fortunate break.
The rest
schedule-wise.
disadvantage is massive in that regard. Like there's even
Yes.
in the NFL, like that's a big factor. This is that onto the extreme of how much rest disadvantage is going on here. So
Jake, do
Yes.
you remember a couple years ago when there was an actual complaint lodged against the ACC for always giving teams a bye before they played the option? I think Paul
I do.
actually filed a complaint, or it
Mhm.
might have just been he went on a tirade in a press conference about this.
Both are equally likely.
For sure. Yeah, I think both of you have summed it up well. It's a very deceptive final score. I think the truer final score, if you go by EPA, is probably like 8 points, or if you want to be a little bit more vague about it, it's probably like 2 scores. It's just
yeah.
that Tech got lucky in garbage time and put together a couple of scores about like they did versus Notre Dame in 2016. Um, so yeah. Next game at home versus VMI. That is on the 14th of September. It's a 3:30 p.m. kickoff on ACC Network Extra. Not much from us on this one, I feel like. It's just like take care of business and go on your merry way, wouldn't you say?
Yep, it's a recycling of the Georgia State situation, just with less Marta bowl. There's no bowl here. It's just win the game.
Thinks it's not
That, yeah,
new.
must. Absolutely 110 million% must.
Yeah, I'll be curious. Like what I feel like I forgot to mention this. Like it didn't feel like they were getting as complex with their run plays as they had been against Florida State, especially where they felt like we were like in our bag trying to just do stuff. This one felt kind of simple. I mean, I'm no offensive coordinator. I don't really know. There's stuff going on that I will never understand here, but the fact that Jamal Haynes never really got going in this game and kind of just ran into a brick wall a lot for 1 or 2 yards over and over and over again and not getting outside and stuff like that. I wonder what they saw that caused that or what all went down in there. It's just again beyond me, but the fact that there wasn't just all the weird stuff we kind of are known for. The weird stuff we were known for that worked was like when Haynes would fake pitch and then get like 8 yards. Like that's the stuff that looked like us that was working, but we only ran it so many times.
It also helps when he trips, doesn't get tackled, and then
Yes,
he's able to step back up and run into the end zone for a touchdown.
That
Generally,
was
that helps
awesome.
too.
that
It
was
was
I've
great,
sounded
to be
very
fair.
negative. That was phenomenal.
that was
And he had
awesome.
another great
Yeah,
run for a touchdown in there too. So no,
He had
not wanting to, let that slip by without mentioning it.
he had a very complete game, and there are some negatives that we could talk about on another podcast on another day, but I think we've beat this horse into glue at this point. So why don't we take a quick break and we'll be back to talk about a very eventful week in the life of Georgia Tech volleyball back in a tick.
Yes, as always, this podcast is brought to you by Section 103. That's Section 103, Georgia Tech's premier provider of all things Georgia Tech apparel. I don't know if we noted this, but 4 new gold shirts, including Gold Point Tech shirts, North Avenue Trade School, and Ramblin' Rec. Check those out on their site. Of course, you can also find NIL shirts. You can find just general Georgia Tech shirts. You can find things for various teams and players on them. So be sure to check them out. It is the best place to find not just gold gear, which is, again, 4 new gold shirts, but also white, navy, some gray in there too. So be sure to check them out. That's section103.com and on Twitter at section103. As always, 10% off using code FTRS and free shipping over $80. Gents, back to you.
Let's talk about the number 19 women's volleyball team in the country, shall we? Georgia Tech ripped off 2 wins this week away in Provo, a sweep of Lipscomb, and a 3-2 fifth set victory, an extremely tight victory over number 14 BYU on their home court, which, by the way, the broadcast made a very good point about this. The current head coach of BYU has only lost in 10 years 9 times on that court.
Mm.
And this was number 10. It went to
mm-hmm.
5 sets versus Lipscomb, which we'll spend a little bit of time here before going on to the meat and potatoes. That was Michelle Collier's 200th victory as Georgia Tech's head coach. They just kind of took care of business. Easy does it. And then we move on to the ranked opponent, the the monster in the castle, if you will, in BYU. Jack, you were watching this one along with me. Do you want to walk us through this game?
This one was thinking about the fact that we just barely couldn't take care of UCLA at home. I mean, BYU and the fact that BYU just basically never loses in Provo. This was definitely we were not favorites at all going into this game. Now, of note, BYU had a lot more starting lineup changes. The broadcast was talking about how like they were kind of still working through who actually was like even their real starters this year, and they had some players that had to pull out, some players stayed in and whatnot. While we changed our setter and our libero, we were just kept on trucking. Uh, the overall theme here is that clearly both teams were working out some kinks early season, like they weren't playing at their full potential, but at their best, we were better than BYU. We were better than BYU's best for sure. BYU got us 25-16 in the first set. We had a lot. There was a lot of defense, a lot of errors going on. We just had more errors basically. Second set, we looked totally fine. We looked really good. Broke out to a 10-7 lead. Had a 4-point lead at one point. Got to five. Got to actually we got it to seven. We got to it was a 9-point lead. We kind of oh sorry, I'm looking at the Lipscomb game. God damn it, I'm looking at the wrong article. I'm so bad at this.
This is great podcasting, by the way.
I was like, what? We didn't lead by nine. All right.
No, but to carry the load here, in sets two and four, what they did is to your point, they came out firing, right? They came out and ripped off like 3, 4, 5 points to
Yeah.
open those sets, and then it got close. And I think BYU did the same thing on the other side. Yes, it sounds cliche, but I think this is something that that UCLA did too really well is that once they got to that 5 points ahead, that 6 points ahead mark, UCLA, they would not let go. And and Tech just couldn't overcome that barrier to get across the hump.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. They neither fully ever dominated for one. Like BYU had their like Claire Little was really good for them and just finding out of system shots that just would find the right spot. Like she had what 20 kills, and it felt like all of them were just like, she's just standing in the back corner and just pummels one and then fight, and somehow they get a point out of it. Like they were really good about staying in when they were on their back foot. We had to get in system a little bit more, but it wasn't as bad, I guess, as in BYU's case. We had 357 in the second set, which is really nice. Only 139 in the third set, and then fourth and fifth, we looked a lot better as well. And we were down in that fifth set, down 6-3, and then had a 5-0 run to pull back. Kind of very similar to how that Florida game went last year, where we not convincingly winning that fifth set and then just pulled it out at the end. And we were down to 14-13. Like we had multiple set points and lost two of them and had to call a timeout and everything, and it worked out. So got it done. It was one of those gritty wins that they were better, but this was still clearly like it had the road feel and had to overcome some barriers, and they got it done. It was really, really impressive for an early season win. Their fourth straight ranked win against a non-con opponent, dating back to last year.
This game
Pretty good
was
streak to have.
This game was insane. Also because Tech challenged 2 calls in the first set and did not have a single challenge the entire rest of the match in a match which was like, I don't like complaining about refs, but this one was kind of atrocious across the board. Like even with video review, making bad calls what is a choice.
And that affected the game because there was multiple calls that could have gone our way if Kalia had those challenges still in her back pocket that she didn't have. And she kind of sometimes uses them as just like extra timeouts too. And there were absolutely spots where we needed those. There was one call that was blatantly wrong that the refs changed on their own on like, I think it was a touch call. But outside of that, like, yeah, this game.
There were multiple touch calls that were like that hurt Tech, right? There was one that was on BYU's side of the court where BYU, it clearly comes off
hits her forearm,
Alex Bauer's forearm
Yeah.
and hits the ground. And after video review, I think this is one of the challenges actually. This is the second challenge that she lost. It comes off of Alex Bauer's forearm and falls inbounds, and they still call it BYU point. So Tech is now out of challenges. And then at least 4 times during the course of this match, there are like net touches or like just ball touches or hand touches at the net, which skate by Tech and don't make any contact, that are called BYU points that you would love to have back.
Right now, well,
in especially a game that's this tight, like you'd love to have them back.
Now we only got to a 2-point gap at the end in the fifth set. Every other set was won by at least between 4 or 5 points, or 6. And so, I mean, in the end, what that changes is maybe some form of momentum or just like rhythm and stuff like that, which could result in those 4-point swings. You never know. But it in the end, it wasn't down to like 1 or 2 points in a single set until the very end, where we pretty convincingly had that set in the not in the bag, but we had created the gap needed to allow a couple. Jake, I know you have a note here.
Yeah, I think my way that I want to tie how I've been feeling about both of these teams this week together is that, and I want your guys' thoughts on this too, is kind of penciling things out before the year. I had Georgia Tech football at 2-1 after this game, and I had Tech volleyball at 4-1 after this game. How we got there, I don't think is how eh, maybe
Yeah.
you guys foresaw the BYU, but between BYU and UCLA, you figure you lose one, and honestly, I did have FSU emotionally hedged as a loss for football. That said, like in hindsight, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, couple things break different against UCLA, and I mean that very much in the sense of the word. Couple things break different, and that's a win, and they're looking at 5-0, and if ifs and nuts candy and or ifs and buts candy and nuts whatnot, we'd all have a Merry Christmas if Georgia Tech was 3-0 in football. That one probably not as close, but like man,
Right.
Tech blew UCLA off the court for two of those sets, straight up in that opener there, and it's good to get one back. It'll be great for the RPI. I know that FSU lost to Auburn today, Jack, you noted, but
Yeah.
like in terms of SMU beating Nebraska and Miami beating Texas, the conference is pretty good this year, or at least has some pretty statement wins. I'm
Yeah.
not really concerned about the general, number of bids the conference gets. It's just a matter of, these are the kind of games you got to pick up at least a couple, and it's
I agree.
weird.
Yeah.
I think Georgia Tech football, Georgia Tech volleyball, record wise, is exactly kind of where we thought they would be. But the
Different year.
fact that they're
Yeah.
there despite the opportunity is like,
In football,
like
football. I mean, that was football's year last year too. It's like, how did we get to
yeah,
this version of 6-6? I mean, you're
yeah,
right
oh,
about
true.
yeah, and you're right about volleyball. Like I did, I'm looking at my preview now, season preview, and I had us going 23-6, losing to Stanford twice, Pitt twice, Louisville, and BYU. So this
Mhm.
is flip. So we flipped the UCLA and the BYU match, and it still could happen. Who knows? I did also mention this BYU was a toss-up game, and sure enough, got to the fifth set, lost 1-2. So I mean, really toss-up from a 10,000-foot view. I think the big improvement here, week two, or I guess 2 weeks ago, was that UCLA game. Um, is the consistency in this. Like we're still getting to 19, 20 points even on sets we lose. And not fully like just having like a set where we just randomly shut. There was no random shut off set here, which was
Yeah,
that was really big for me to see. Was that Mendez at times last year just played like a freshman and just wasn't playable at times. This time she had the best efficiency of any player and was the most critical second to Otene in terms of our attacks. Like that was a
yeah,
big deal. We also just were a lot better just swinging the ball. We had okay, look wrote this down. We had 19 more kills, but we had 11 more attack errors and 7 more service errors. We were just taking more swings than BYU. We were getting positioning ourselves better to just create offense, and we just are sometimes swing wild and miss that, or as we mentioned, missed calls and things like that. So in a sense, we were kind of dictating this game, not fully, but we were putting ourselves in positions to actually take it to generate points, and they were doing that in a rough environment.
I would adjust that statement to Tech was dictating this game in those, and this again sounds
Not the
obvious,
first
but
set,
Tech
definitely not
was,
the first set, but
yeah,
yeah,
they were dictating this game in the sets that they won, right? And again, that sounds obvious, but when you're playing for like the calculus changes when you're playing from behind versus playing from ahead,
right. And we
right?
yeah,
got to play
And
from ahead in the second, third, and
in
fourth
two, four,
sets.
and five, they
Yeah,
didn't lead in the other two.
yeah.
It
No, we were
was
down. Yeah, we were down. Well, we were down 6-3 in the fifth. We were ahead. We got to 3-0 leads in the second and third, and they got to 5-1 in the fourth. So yeah, like we didn't have to, as you mentioned, like not playing from behind. That does help a lot. That helps our
yeah.
rotations stay our rotations that we want them to be critically. Like the 6-2 came in every time. Laura Fisher actually became the right side hitter in the 6-2. She replaced Laura Fisher mid match, and that ended up being what looked like a good move because Fisher was not looking good, and Harper got a few kills in there, and a couple blocks as well to her name, which is really nice to see. Where we were getting out blocked again per usual. Um, but yeah, that's a big step up here is not falling behind early and playing from behind. That momentum in all those various nouns.
Tech really did get outblocked in this one for the game, by the way. If you're counting by block, assists, which I guess isn't perfect. 12 for Tech, 18 for BYU, plus 2 solo blocks for BYU as well. So it's just a
Yep.
very rough night up front. And I think when we came into the season too, we were saying like if they cannot find some sort of way to get to make their own fate or make their own luck up front, like it's gonna be a rough year against some of these better teams.
That is exactly what we saw against UCLA too. It's going to be a problem against good teams.
Yeah.
Well,
And
guess
I
who we
mean
play
even
next?
versus who is it, Jack?
Well, it's none other than I haven't checked today's rankings if they are updated, but last ranked number 10 Florida Gators, uh, who have 3 national television games in like the next 2 weeks.
They played on t TV tonight, right? Versus like
I think
Wisconsin.
they did, yeah, something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
Good thing we always play really well in McCamish.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
tradition.
Positivity. Ha ha ha.
Yeah. Ugh. I am excited for this game. Not one because of the rematch, two because of the venue, and three because I think there's a lot of potential for Tech to come back from this trip and assess its situation in terms of blocking and then put whatever updated plan into practice versus another top quality opponent.
Yep.
Right? Because this, again, like we just said, it's going to keep like teams like BYU and Florida and Stanford, Louisville and Pittsburgh, which make up the vast majority of Tech's schedule, are going to continue to key on this. And it's not like in some of those cases, yes, Tech is smaller. Like DeAndre Pierce is 6'1", middle blockers on some of these SEC and high tier ACC teams are like 6'3", 6'4",
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Like
And
some
Kemba
of
was
that
there
is
for
size,
BYU. Yeah.
but versus BYU and UCLA, there was no size advantage. It was just a who jumps
Or
first,
not an
how
effective,
solid, how sealed is your block.
not an effective one. Like BYU had like Kemavor was quite tall, but like she was not a plus contributor for them. Like even that Louisville game last year, like they had the size for it. They just weren't taking advantage of it for the in that match. But yeah, most of the time it's going to work against us. I did like I know last year we used a lot of like those tip balls that Bertolino used a bunch, Osuna used a bunch. They used them far more effectively against BYU. Like they were getting a lot of points from those. They were getting them out of system. I don't know if that's a mix of just BYU just wasn't ready for it. They eventually adapted and forced us to full swing and things like that. But the pitch selection, if you want to call it, by our offense, I think was better than usual. Good changes and everything. Last couple of notes. Bertolino had 4 aces but 6 service errors, which is not uncommon for her, but I know she is trying to solve that service error part, so some margin things in there. Otene had a season high 24 kills. Mendez had 21. As I mentioned, she hit 459 to lead the team. Otene was right behind her. And Suarez hit her second ever double-double. She had 23 assists with 13 digs, so good to see her helping with the dig count as well. And we were, as usual, winning the digs, and I think uh, we are on. I've looking, seeing how we played, we are on track to be again one of the best defensive teams in the country, which is no shocker because that is what we are good at teaching. That is what Pinheiro is. That is why we have Claudio Pinheiro, and he is of the best. And I'm so glad he is here and not coaching somewhere else because he totally could head coach somewhere and probably do pretty well.
To say nothing of Claudio's ability to go full Bobby Cox when he wants to.
That's
He
the most
did get a
chart.
yellow card in this game, by the
You
way.
can't go through. We can't. There is no tight game that happens in Georgia Tech volleyball that doesn't have a Claudio Pinheiro yellow card. It's just how it goes.
Yeah, that's just the lot in life.
It's so because no one knew what had happened too. Sorry, this is the last point, but no one on the broadcast didn't know what had happened. I don't think
They weren't used to. Yeah, they
this
had no.
players didn't know what happened.
No.
The broadcasters assumed that someone in Tech's front row had said something naughty,
It had just been like
which
right after there was like like the captains had spoken to the ref as well. So like there was
yeah,
some like it made sense why they would have thought that. But yeah, if you don't know if you didn't know that Claudio was just right there, what his track record was, like there was no reason to think, oh yeah,
yeah.
duh,
Just
Claudio.
just for more context, I think volleyball, when you're talking about refereeing, like only the head coach and
Captains.
the captains can speak to the officials. And Claudio must have said something naughty to one of the officials because they were quick with the yellow
They
on that
sure
one.
did.
But yeah, like we said for volleyball, next match will be in McCamish versus number 10 Florida. That will be on ESPN2. I believe that's a 7 p.m. tip,
7
right?
p.m.
7
tip.
p.m.
Yeah, that is the first of a volleyball doubleheader on ESPN2. Games at 7. They are trying to break the attendance record from last year, which I believe was at 5,200 and change. So get out there if
It's
you
a
don't have
full
anything to
lower
do.
bowl. It's
Yeah,
a almost full lower bowl.
get out
So,
there.
and then a couple of fixtures at the end of the week versus South Florida and Alabama
South Alabama.
State.
South,
South Alabama.
who we played
South
in
South
the.
Florida. Wow.
Alabama and
Yeah.
Alabama State, right?
Yes.
Yellow
Yeah.
Jacket or
Yeah.
Hornets?
Yeah.
Hornets?
We played South Alabama last year twice, once at Florida A&M and then again in the NCAA tournament. So we're going to play our second and then first round NCAA tournament opponents in consecutive games at this event.
If only they scheduled Nebraska too, which
Ah,
SMU swept, by the way. So again, conference doesn't get any easier. It's only getting stronger
yep.
by the week. Gentlemen, I think that's all for our two marquee sports that are in action right now. Anything else from the rest of our slate?
Yeah, I made some notes. Softball, new director of ops. Jack, you got anything on that?
Basically, Devin Boland was the director of ops last year, and then he got promoted to assistant coach. So there was room there, and so Maya Knutson, I think is how you say it, comes in and from Western Illinois, and she'll take over as director of ops, which is more of like an admin role, less than a coaching role. But she has plenty of actual softball experience and has played a bunch and coached in the past, so she'll certainly be an on-field presence. But this is mainly to backfill for Devin Boland's promotion.
Yep. Cool. I've also got noted that there is not a fall slate posted on ramblinrec.com yet, so keep an ear out there. I know other teams are starting to spool up with that. It is also a secondary reason why I'm going to Louisville in 2 weeks. So keep a note out there. Club hockey went 0-1-1 on the weekend. They lost to FSU 5-3 at the Atlanta Ice Forum, and then tied them 3-3. So ties, we do those. Yay. Number 11 golf was in action. When I checked, they had not posted Sunday's results yet. So I'm gonna on the fly go to
I
check
have
to
them
see if do you have the final
because
day
they
results?
literally tweeted them out 1 minute ago.
Oh,
So
delightful. Perfect.
Yay.
I don't have the final total. I can click the link, I guess, but they did finish eighth on the weekend. Hiroshi Tai was the leading scorer, 200 par, tied for 12th overall.
Ole Miss was way out in front after
LSU won.
Saturday, so I see LSU came back.
They
Okay.
won at 23 under. Ole Miss finished at 21 under.
Okay,
Yeah.
Ole Miss was 24 under through Saturday, so they must have had a rough Sunday stretch there. Ty was in 10th at one point. Other than that, not too much doing for the rest of the card. Albert Hansen, true freshman from Sweden, he was in 25th after Saturday. Other names to note: Benjamin Reuter, Carson Kim, Aiden Tran were also on the scorecard. We've noted Ole Miss, and then Tennessee was number 7. They were the hosts, and Virginia Tech was the only other ACC participant from what I could tell there. Any other notes on golf, gents?
I'll throw in on Sunday, Albert Hansen had a 100 par 69 to close out his weekend. And then we also had Brady, excuse me, Rackley, the fourth, participating as an individual, a non-team scoring individual. So pretty good first outing, eighth. Obviously, there's some room to work, but it's the fall. It doesn't really matter. So.
Yep.
Gentlemen, any news and notes from the Institute address earlier this week?
I was in attendance for this, which was cool to see. It was in the new Atlantic Theater, which is in the Student Center, which is just pretty basic theater, but one that they needed to add. Three main things I want to note. They had the 7th college at Georgia Tech has been announced, the College of Lifetime Learning, which is going to, I think, encompass a lot of the seismic activities that happen, which is a lot of rural and at Tech camps for kids and stuff like that. But there's just a greater demand for non-degree learners to take tech classes basically, and the online masters CS masters and cybersecurity masters has done a lot to kind of push us in that direction. And so I forgot if they said there's a date and they like things to get going, but Tech will now be comprised of 7 colleges instead of 6 going forward. Um, the Shenzhen campus is going to be taken offline. The
Oh,
Yes, this is very recent. They were talk at the institute address. They mentioned like, yeah, we're having to deal with this. Might not keep going because basically the partner organization we're with, or the partner school we're there in China, which is by law, by Chinese law, you have, if an outside entity comes and like basically does business, you have to have a Chinese partner there with you. They have basically just been investigated by the feds for a while here. Tech has been very open and transparent with all their stuff, and all their comms were in the clear and stuff like that. But
The U.S. feds, by the way, to
yes, the
be
U.S.
clear.
feds, yes, they are kind of not. Yeah, basically, there's been a lot of government investigation, and so we're just going to pull out. Basically, those that are there get to finish their degrees and whatnot. But basically, the Tech Shenzhen campus is going to be no longer. And then this was fun. The aerospace engineering is going to get a brand new building at some point. I don't. They didn't mention if they're like gonna like just replace the Guggenheim building or use some of the other empty lands out there.
I don't think you can physically knock down the Guggenheim and Montgomery Knight because they are contributing structures, as far as I recall, to the historical district
Probably
over
that.
there.
I have not read that page yet in
Yeah.
the big old document that I'm working on reading and would have that answer. But basically, yes, they've done some of those like sketch images of like what a building could look like. It looked really nice. Cabrera was like, "This isn't what it's gonna look like. This is just a mock-up. Like, don't worry about it." But yes, so we're gonna have, basically in the next 10 to 15 years there will be new buildings for ISYE, aerospace engineering, maybe for lifetime learning, probably not though. And then Scheller master's programs, and then the dorms and whatnot. So more construction is always coming. They're still working. There was a big, not boiler. It wasn't a boiler outage. Basically, they ran out of cold water, and
It was
on
the
campus,
chiller plant.
the chiller
Yeah.
basically went offline, and that delayed a lot of other stuff on campus and diverted resources, which is why there's other construction projects still happening, which everyone will see when they come to the game on Saturday or to the volleyball game on Wednesday or Thursday or Friday. There's 4 straight days of games this week on campus.
My only note is that I pulled up an article about the Georgia Tech Shenzhen thing, and if you look very closely at the thumbnail that's used, you can see Ken Byers still under construction in the background.
Oh, that's funny. Wow.
And so this photo must be at least what, like 12 years old?
That
2011 was when that
Jesus.
facility opened.
That's wow. Okay.
Yeah, at least 12, maybe 13, 14, something like that. Anyway, fun. No, yeah, it would, because Brock is done and Brock opened in 09. Yeah.
Okay. There
Anyway,
you go.
very, very cool fact. That's your trivia for the week. Since we were working on, we had so much other stuff to cover. That is your trivia for the week.
So funny that you mentioned Shenzhen. Is the first time you mentioned it, I was like, brain was like grinding the gears inside of it, because I've been doing honeymoon planning stuff the last couple days, and my brain went straight to Schengen because I was thinking Europe,
Oh,
things like
Schengen
that.
zone.
So that
Yeah.
was a bit of an oof where I was like, oh my goodness, it's GTL. And then I pivoted
No.
real fast. So the fact that, and I know podcasting's a visual medium, that you didn't see my face go like, yikes. Yeah,
Yep.
because they did, that's GT Europe now, right?
GT, yeah, it is now GT Europe, but
Yeah.
I do not refer to it as that even amongst
Yeah, that's
people at
weird to
Tech.
me.
So it is still GTL in my brain, but yeah, that is alive and well. Nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's what I
Shenzhen
figured.
has a Z and an H in it.
Yeah.
So
I did not
to
spell
worry.
that word properly when I first put it in the doc at all, which I feel bad about, but I got it right the second time.
It happens.
Well, you'll have to sit with that, because that is about it for us this week. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. Listeners, thank you for joining us as well. Jake, where can the good people find us?
Yes, as always, you can find us at FromTheRumbleSeat.com. All our stuff lives there in addition to this podcast. Great written content from our team. You can email us from therumbleseat@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at FTRSblog. I'm at JakeGrant98. Jack is at Jack Nicholas. You can find Section 103 on Twitter as well, at Section 103 or Section103.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at From the Rumble Seat. You can find podcasts wherever fine podcasts are distributed. Please tell your friends. Direct word of mouth is the best way for them to hear about us. But until you hear from us again, good night, good luck, and go Jackets.